Hello, I am Amy Keller. This is my presentation for the Ask an Expert interview assignment. I interviewed Jeff Keller as my expert. He has been in located ministry for 22 years. He started as a youth and worship minister and is currently in his 9th year as lead pastor of a medium-sized church. Jeff has a BA in general ministry from Lincoln Christian University after starting at Johnson, and an MA in pastoral leadership from Cincinnati Christian University and Bible Seminary. He is also my husband of 28 years. Even though I have walked through his career change and schooling with him, this interview gave a new perspective and has developed new conversations between us. I will not read all of Jeff's responses word for word, but will give you highlights. Feel free to pause the video to read them in their entirety. Jeff says his favorite part of the Old Testament is the historical books. He loves the rich history of God's interaction with the people of Israel, his patience, his orchestration of the master plan of salvation seen woven throughout. Jeff states the Israelites just can't seem to find a way to avoid the temptation to pull away from God's protection, provision, and love to pursue what seems right in their own eyes. We see ourselves in the people of the Old Testament and understand our relationship with God. What value does the Old Testament have for modern Christians? Jeff says the Old Testament is vital to our understanding of who Jesus is and what he came to do. Jeff helps others connect to the Old Testament through Bible studies, Sunday school classes, and sermons by exegetically breaking down the scriptures. He also encourages his congregation to use Bible reading plans to spend time in both the Old and New Testaments. He has been interested lately in topography, geography, anthropology, and archaeology to understand the locations and time of each story. The greatest challenge using the Old Testament in ministry, Jeff reveals, is his need to grow in his understanding, especially in the prophetical books. Some people's limited experience with the Old Testament also can cause difficulties. Jeff's most difficult part of the Old Testament to incorporate in his ministry is the minor prophets, just because he has not spent much time studying or teaching them. The most important things to know in studying the Old Testament, Jeff expresses, are to encourage people with the following. Don't get hung up on names of people and places. Put yourself in the environment mentally and understand all 66 books are one story of God's love and his relationship with the object of his love, us. My responses to the questions are as follows. And of course, I had to stick in my adorable grandkids. I think my greatest personal challenge in studying the Old Testament as a student is being intimidated by the Old Testament. Even though I am familiar with most of it, it is so much history. History is not my strongest subject. I find it hard to keep all the names of people and places straight. Some of them have very similar names or they have name changes. When reading through it, the stories are sometimes repeated, making me think, didn't this already happen? Understanding the culture of the times can be difficult as well. Seeing how women, children, slaves, and others were treated is difficult to excuse. In the book God Behaving Badly, the author David T. Lamb discusses some of these issues, which helps to shine a light on these cultural specific issues, along with the random laws that don't seem to make any sense. I do agree with my expert about the value of the Old Testament for modern Christians. Here are his main points while answering this question. Without the background knowledge from the Old Testament, we cannot understand the New Testament and Jesus. A lot of people do not want to dig into the Old Testament because it can be difficult to understand and sometimes even tedious. However, we need to focus on God through it and what we can learn about Him. My only critique of my specialist's answer is to make sure to emphasize that the Old Testament God is the same as the New Testament God. One is not a God of wrath and one of love. He is the same. He is one, both wrath and love. I know that Jeff understands this, but just didn't necessarily state it in his answers. What I would like to do to effectively engage students in the Old Testament is to do devotions and activities for Proverbs 31, the wife of noble character. This would be 6 Sunday evenings just for ladies. Even though the seemingly unattainable role model is from the Old Testament, we can still learn from her and is relevant even today. We have many talented ladies in our church that can lead all these activities with me being in charge of coordination and organization. This would be a great way to showcase their talents, get a variety of ladies to lead, and attract a diverse group for the classes. The first day would be a devotion on verse 10. She is worth far more than rubies. Then the class would make a beaded bracelet as a reminder of their worth. The second week will focus on verse 13. She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. We will discuss how we should be eager to use the gifts given us. A demonstration on how to knit and crochet will follow the devotion, along with hands-on materials for them to try. Next will be verses 14 through 15. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. We can discuss how we should keep our and our family's bodies healthy from the inside. We will present a meal planning system and healthy recipe exchange. The fourth evening will concentrate on verse 17. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for the task. We will discuss keeping our bodies healthy again. This is something we need to hear about more than once. Then we will be led in a workout adaptable to different levels of fitness. The fifth evening, we will look at verse 20. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. We will discuss helping those that are in need. Our project for the evening will be making cards and writing notes for our shut-ins. Lastly, we will look at verse 27. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. We will have a devotion on idleness. We have several ladies in their 30s that mill their own wheat, make sourdough bread, and churn homemade butter. They will give a demonstration, then the best part will be tasting their samples. That concludes my presentation. I know this assignment and this class have been enlightening for me on the importance of the Old Testament for us even today. A lot of people do not realize the relevancy of it, how it shows us God's heart and points us to Jesus. Hopefully, I will be able to defend the value of the Old Testament when needed. Thanks for watching.